Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast, So There I Was. It's how all great aviation tales begin. This is episode 110. Pulled the handle, just not very hard.
Oh!
Yeah, close call. Sponsor this week is FTIratings.com. Get your ATP or type rating in a big airline full motion simulator. And do it with $100 off when you mention our show. We'll talk more about that during the show, but this is a good one. This is our continuation with Dan, who
Danger
turned
Close
the tables
Dan.
on us, Fig.
He turned the microphone around on us.
Yeah. Hey, what about you guys? What about us?
Nice. Yeah, so, that was the part of the podcast share, or what do we call that? Swap?
Yeah, that's
podcast
it.
swap?
Yeah, show swap. He's running both
swap.
of these shows last week and this week in his feed, Danger Close. And we're running our shows, obviously, in his show with us, so to speak. We're and mentioning Danger Close, which is a great podcast, fun listen to. He has some interviews with some military folks, but he does his show all about war films with the film critic and he said it and I'm blank again. Was it a producer or?
Well, somebody in the know on how
show business,
how movies are made and the technical aspects of it. Anyway, it's pretty interesting, and I think it's kind of a good it's niche, obviously, kind of like ours. This is aviation, and so, but it was kind of weird. He turned the microphone around on us, started asking us questions, so kind of recaged my gyro a little bit.
Right? We should have taken the fifth, Fig.
Well, there's a lot. There's some truth to that, and I didn't really, we didn't go into. We could go. Well, I got some liberty risk tendencies, and I got some stories that go along with it. So there's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about, and that's probably a good thing.
A very good point. Very good point. We do talk about how we both wound up going into the Marine Corps. Some of those stories, and the title this week comes from your story where you found yourself thinking you were going to leave the T-45 Goshawk behind in Kingsville, give it back to the government. So you reached down and pulled the handle and then went, oh.
Yeah, don't tease it. I mean, don't go too far there.
That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. It was one of those deals where it was a reflex, and let's just leave it at that. And boy, oh boy, it could have gone really bad had it not worked out the way it did.
Right. And then the other thing, I'll tell you what, let's get out of the way and listen to this. But before we do, let's mention one more thing. If you go to sothereiwas.us/Patreon, for as little as a $5 donation, you can get this week's extra. And that is Dan, as an air traffic controller, was in the tower the day Asiana 214 crashed back in 2013. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, for those that don't remember or not quite sure, it was a 777 that landed short on it basically hit the seawall on the approach end of runway 28 left 28 right in San Francisco.
Yeah.
On a beautiful, not a cloud in the sky morning.
Yeah, everything was going swimmingly, so to speak, and then things went bad in a hurry. And he talks about all the challenges that are faced by the air traffic controllers once something like that happens. Hundreds of flights inbound from all over the world.
He brought up stuff that you just don't even think about.
Yeah. So fascinating to hear it. So I think let's hear our stories for once. Let's get out of the way and do it.
Don't sit on the ejection seat handle.
Don't do it.
Especially after it's dangling there.
This here is a true story about
Don't touch
crossing
anything
the
that's
pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. There I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly...
I want to turn it over to you guys and eventually I do want to get into a little bit of your commenting on war films, especially as related to being pilots and Harrier pilots and all that. So I'll give you an opportunity to mention kind of your favorites and ones that you hate. But in general, especially for my crowd that hasn't listened to you guys yet, although I'm turning them on to your show and I'm sure they're going to enjoy a lot of you. I've listened to 4 or 5 episodes. You guys do an amazing job. I've heard World War II vets and Vietnam vets, and you guys really have some great stories. So I'm really excited for everyone to listen to the show.
I can't tell you what an honor it is to hear some of these guys' stories. Everybody's stories.
Right.
Everybody has great stories.
We fell ass backwards into a good idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I guess speaking of which, I might start, instead of going all the way back to your initial aviation stuff, which we'll get to, how the hell did you guys decide to start a podcast? You're airline pilots, you're busy, you got families, I'm sure. Like,
it's his fault.
I know how much work this takes.
It's his fault. His fault.
So we had a Harrier anniversary 2 years ago in this past April. It was supposed to be April of 2022.
April 21.
April of 21, but they canceled it because of the COVID.
You might have heard about
we
that.
We had it in April of 22. It was the 50th anniversary of the Harrier.
Wow.
And so just I'm going to give you a quick Reader's Digest version of that because I don't want to hijack your podcast. For the 3 or 4 years previous to that, my wife had been in my shit because I kept saying, I tell her all these stories that I hear from guys I fly with, from buddies, flying stories, and I would be at a social function with my wife and not surrounded by any of my aviation friends, and kind of feeling like a fish out of water. And eventually somebody says, "What do you do?" And you don't really want to say because that usually causes a bunch of questions. But if it's quiet, and I'll tell somebody, "Well, I'm a pilot." "Well, what do you fly?" And then I'll start talking, and then next thing I know, I'm telling a flying story, and the whole damn party's listening to this story because it's about aviation or flying. And so, people that don't know anything about flying, they're captivated by flying stories. So I told my wife, after that thing, I said, I should do a podcast because I hear these stories all the time. I need to have these people tell their stories on a podcast. Now, I don't know shit about how to produce one and all this. And so I'm talking about it for like 3 years. Fast forward, we go to the Harrier anniversary reunion, and I bought a digital recorder with the intent of grabbing a half a dozen stories from some of my peers and then figuring out how to start this podcast. Well, we're at a big social event for the anniversary. Repeat walks up to me and goes, "Hey, I hear you want to do a podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, you want to call it So There I Was?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Can I do it with you?" And I said, "Yes." And 1 month later, because of that guy, we had our first podcast, and we've been doing one a week ever since.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was nuts. What happened was in 2007, Windows came out with this program the operating system called Vista. You might have heard of it. And it was such a turd tornado. I went, "That's it. I'm out." And I went and bought a Mac. And I was looking for ways to find out how to use a Mac because I didn't know how Macs worked. And I was actually kind of a squadron guru on Windows. Guys came to me all the time. How do I format my hard drive? How do I get the system to work? That kind of stuff. And I was pretty good at it. And I listened to this one podcast called the Mac Geek Gab. And about a month to 6 weeks into it, I'm going, this guy sounds like he's pretty near me. And by about 2 months, and I go, we've got kids in the same school system. So I reached out to him. Turns out he's about 3.5 miles from me. And it's Dave Hamilton from Backbeat Media and the Mac Geek Gab. And I said, "Hey, I'm interested in your technical setup and how you do all this." And he invited me in, and I went in and sat in there, and I got to play the peanut gallery because this was all before live streaming. This is 2007. There was not live streaming on YouTube and all that then. And I got invited back. "Hey, anytime you want to come in and ask stupid questions, you're welcome to do so." And so I've been doing that for, 18 years now, 17 years anyway. And then in 2009, I did 4 shows called Box Aviator, and it was the same thing that this is, but it was really low energy because it was just me talking to one other person And so it was very much more like this. And so then what happened? And man, when I got this Liberty Risk Fig interested in doing a podcast with me, I went, yeah, baby, we can do some high energy stuff and it'll actually be fun to listen to. And the rest is history. So yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have chemistry, right? That's important in a podcast. I've definitely learned that. So,
I mean, I happen to have the right connections to be able to get the bits and bytes and the on and the off and the ones and the zeros into the technical ether. And Fig has the personality and the ability to converse with anybody. And we've fallen ass backwards into some really great guests. I mean, it's been amazing. And it's been so much fun. We've been really blessed. And, so, listen, I'm not saying that any of our guests are better than others or not better than others and all that. But one thing leads to another. We did a show called We Were on a Mission from God. And and he was talking about, I said, what's the funniest thing or scariest thing you ever saw? And I stumped him. And he's like, let me think about that. I went, okay. Have you ever reached for the handle? Oh, yeah. So he talked about that and almost ejecting. And he was a BN in A6s. And he talked about almost ejecting off the Cat 4, the waste cat on the USS Lincoln. And I went, oh, USS Lincoln. And I remember a BN who got partially ejected. Hey, you know this guy? Oh, yeah, he was in my squadron. And so that was Yogi and Master. And then they started talking about the LSO that waved them aboard. And were like, you in touch with him? No. And the guy wrote to me a few weeks later and said, oh, I went to safety school with that LSO, and here he is. And that was Nasty. We did 4 shows with Nasty and hope to have him back. Retired as a 2-star and just the most natural, down-to-earth, conversational guy you want to have a conversation with, and a genuinely good human being who understands how to take care of people and lead them through tough times and good times. And
true leader.
Yeah.
Absolute.
Yeah. And then he's the one when
spores.
Yeah. And Royce Williams didn't have a call sign, but Royce got the Navy Cross for shooting down 4 MiGs in a 1v6 fight. And I read about that and I couldn't find him. And I reached out to Nasty. Nasty goes, yeah, here's his number.
Yeah.
Oh, this has just been, and you know what? And now we're starting to get more, it's starting to snowball. More and more guys are coming to us on Facebook and that sort of thing. And we're getting some amazing guests. Yeah. And as Sticks points out, let's not forget One Eye, who that's more Medal of Honor shit there. I'm shocked this man didn't get the Medal of Honor.
I know.
I couldn't believe that story when I listened to it. It is crazy.
Right. That's somewhere in the 60s. One Eye literally flew a helicopter blind
out of a
hot LZ.
Hot muy fuego.
Yeah. I mean, Medal of Honor shit just flying a helicopter, but doing it without any eyesight. What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing about that one. Dude needed to match up his tachometer. It was called a Tritach, which is Tritach has 3 needles in it, and the needles need to match up so he can engage the rotor properly. Well, he's blind. He can't see the tack. So what does he do? He pulls out his fighting knife and breaks the glass so he can feel the tachometer with his finger. When the needles line up, he engages and gets airborne.
That's some high-level shit right there, dude.
Yeah, that's Medal of Honor shit there. He saved 9 Marines that night. So yeah,
incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I guess we should take the opportunity. I was thinking about this earlier. It's Memorial Day tomorrow, so
yeah.
I would say let's raise a glass to all those who either in their service or afterwards didn't make it through, but we're thanking you and thinking about all of you and your families.
Amen. So, amen. And by the time you hear this on recording, it's going to be past us. And I saw something today that I'd never seen before, but I really liked it. We don't know them all, but we owe them all.
Well, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had three Harrier classmates that died in our first tour. We were peers. We all went to the basic school together. Mm-hmm. So here's to Rip, here's to Biscuit, and here's to JJ.
Amen,
boys.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'll throw one out there to my buddy Hastings, who was out there in Iraq with me. and my buddy Lincoln Woods, who both died after the Marine Corps, one in a car accident and one sadly by suicide. But another reminder to all the vets out there that there is a lot of help out there for you. So if you're struggling with anything in life, you know, whether it's your bills or your family or whatever it is, reach out to the VA, reach out to a veteran that you know, and get some help, because it's out there and we're all willing to help each other and make sure that you get through it okay. So
amen. And I'll mention a few at the risk of leaving some out because I don't want to. Obviously, Biscuit, Booger, Steve Beguer, Bryce Gerhardt, Gilligan, Mark Gilligan, and Dave Brown, Doc Brown. Those are just 4 of the 17 or 18 friends I've lost over the years. And God bless you. Hal Hawkins, who talked me in to naval aviation back when I was the dumbass junior in high school, thinking I don't want to go in the military. So God bless every one of you and your families who gave up so much, who have an empty spot at their table and in their hearts this year and every year. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, moving on to lighten things up a little bit.
Yeah. Happy time.
The important stuff. So I've heard a little bit about you guys. And, you know, it's interesting, too. I don't talk to officers that much. So it's always fun to compare the enlisted Marine Corps experience to the officer Marine Corps experience. And it's interesting to note that a lot of it is very similar. Like, you might have to salute every person you pass by because they're either below you or above you. But, you know, in terms of having to find your own way to a shitter or trading toilet paper for a Humvee or a lot of other stories like that I've heard from you guys and your guests, right. How did you get tricked into joining the Marine Corps as opposed to one of those other better funded branches like the Air Force, they don't have barracks, they have dorms and they have AC and microwaves and an actual budget, you know, because it's not a trope.
Right.
That from Band of Brothers all the way back, or the Pacific rather, with Marines all the way back to the 1940s in World War II, Marines are known to adapt and overcome. You got to go steal equipment. You got to scrub the Army number off of the Army building so that the Marine Corps can take it over. Like, this is a very common thing that I know is the case. So how did you guys get tricked into the Marine Corps?
Go get him, Phil.
I'm going to acquiesce to my senior partner.
There you go. Mine is almost mine is almost a stupid one. I was in college and I sent off I had a family member who was in the Marines, and so I sent off for one of those T-shirt iron-ons, Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. Because I mean, what's cooler than the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, right? And it's called marketing, folks. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I get a call from a gunnery sergeant. Says, "Hey, you want to fly jets in the Marine Corps?" I'm like, hold on. I can go be a veterinarian and get bit by dogs, get kicked in the teeth by horses, or I can fly fast jets, drink beer, and chase women. Which of these career paths should I choose? And so that's how I wound up going to PLCs. Like 5 weeks later, I'm in Quantico, Virginia. In Quantico, you still owe me an apology, you bastards. And the rest of it, yeah.
What's PLC for the audience?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so platoon leaders class, which is the officer candidate school. That's as I mentioned earlier. You go between your freshman. Well, you can go anytime, but between your freshman and sophomore year, and then in the summer between your junior and senior year, and then when you graduate, you get commissioned, and then go to 6 months of the basic school before you're allowed to go out and learn how to be a Marine.
Right. Big.
I went to the PLC program as well, except I went 1 10-week summer between junior and senior year of college, and honestly, I didn't intend to go in the Marine Corps to fly. I got sick of college about 18 months into my collegiate experience. I'm like, this is stupid. I'm going to go in the Marine Corps. Why? Because, I was fit and the Marine Corps made sense, and the Marine Corps always seemed badass to me. So I went and talked to recruiters, and of course, they told me everything I wanted to hear. So I went home and I said to my dad, "Hey, I'm going to go in the Marine Corps, and I'm going to do 4 years, and then I'll come out and finish college." And he goes, God, proud of you. Awesome. And then my mom came home and she freaked the fuck out because I was the only person on her side of the family that I was the oldest grandchild and I was grandson, and I was the only one that ever had a chance to go to college. So it was very important to her that I finished college. So that put the kibosh on that. So fast forward, I'm at a college in Missouri that has an aviation program, and I got my pilot's license, and I was working on my commercial, and walked through the student union one day, and there's a Marine captain standing there with the red tablecloth, and he had a picture of a Harrier and like an F4 and an A4, and I stopped, and I looked at it, and he goes, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "I want to fly that." He goes, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes." And then he said, "Well, can you run a PFT?" And I said, "Yes." Well, what the fuck is a PFT? And so 30 minutes later, I'm running a PFT with this dude, and then I threw up while we were running because I just had biscuits and gravy at the student union right before I met him. And so as I'm running and throwing up, he goes, "You want to stop?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to stop."
He goes, "Save the chunky parts for me."
Yeah. As I'm running, and he was an infantry officer. And as I'm running and throwing up, he goes, "You want to stop?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to stop." And so when we got done, he goes, "That was badass. That was badass." And so he was in my corner from that day forward. And so he really helped me with the paperwork and everything, put a package in, and then you know the rest of the story. I got an aviation contract, and I went to officer candidate school, and they tried to make me quit, but I wouldn't quit. And I was so pissed when I left officer candidate school, because I didn't get commissioned that day. I had to go back and finish my senior year. I was so pissed that they treated me so shitty that when I got back to college, I called this Navy officer recruiter who'd been kind of hounding me to go in the Navy and fly. And I said, "Hey, I just got back from OCS. I graduated." And he says, "Hey, congratulations, And I said, "What do I got to do to get a commission in the Navy?" And it was quiet for like 5 seconds. And he goes, "Well, you got to go to Navy AOCS." And I go, "Oh, yeah, well, fuck you," and hung up. And then I got commissioned when I graduated from college, and well, here we are.
So, yeah, let me just add to that I tried to go in the Navy too, but I may or may not have worn some steel bracelets at one point during my junior year. So the Navy was no longer interested.
What? I don't understand that.
Wait, what?
Huh.
Everything was dropped. All charges
Now-
dropped. But
Now, to our defense, neither one of us had any idea that there was something out there called the Air Guard. Now, I learned all this way later after the fact, and holy shit, that may have been a game changer.
if I'd have only known about the Air Guard then, I've often said, and I tell my daughter who's junior at Riddle right now, or just finished her junior year at Riddle, I would commit any felony possible to get a slot in an Air Guard, flying Vipers, flying Eagles, flying C-130s. I mean, oh my God, it is the best deal going. If you're listening to this,
it was.
You think you want to
back
fly?
in the day.
Yeah, I still think it is. If you're young and you're finishing college and you want to fly, if you can get a job in the Air Guard somewhere flying airplanes, go do it. And you're a fool not to. That's my personal opinion.
Would I go back and do anything different? No.
Yeah. Yes, it is, Sticks. It is what kept me from the Navy, was attempting to commit felonies. So.
I'm going to cut all of this part out of my version of the show because it's not pro Marine Corps enough, so I can't be repping the Guard on our show.
Fuck those Guard guys. Those Guard guys are fags.
Right.
And I can say that because I finished my
he is
career
one.
in the Air Guard. I was the commander of a squadron at the end. And so I can say that. It's okay.
So it sounds like Fig actually did pick Harriers early on. Repeat,
Yeah.
maybe you didn't? How did you end up at flying Harriers?
So I was
And also,
yeah.
if you could, for the non-initiated, describe a little bit in your own words kind of what a Harrier is and what it can do.
Yeah, so that's you want to go, let's talk about something that is in your wheelhouse at movies, which is the movie True Lies. Man. And that was actually our squadron that flew the Harriers in True Lies. So that's the jump jet. The British was the original one, the Hawker Siddeley AV-8A, or the Sea Harrier, the jump jet that can fly at 640 knots or hover like a helicopter. and it's a single engine, single seat, light attack jet. And I always thought they were cool. And when I left Cherry Point the first time to go to flight school, I wanted to come back and fly Harriers.
Okay.
When I got to the boat, which means I did my carrier qualifications in flight school, I went, oh, I think I want to fly Hornets. So I could always go Hornets to Harriers, but going from Harriers to Hornets in the Marine Corps is next to impossible. I know, 4 guys who've done it. So yeah, there's a picture for the live stream on YouTube of Arnold Schwarzenegger standing up in the cockpit of a Harrier, grabbing his daughter's hand, because, that could happen. Anyway,
It's hovering.
so much Hollywood.
Really.
But yeah, no. So I got to the basic school, and it turned out in the summer of 1984, fall of 1984, they had about 400 Marine lieutenants with flight contracts, and they had about 75 slots for Marine lieutenants to go to flight school. And they went, uh-oh, what are we going to do? So they decided they were going to send us all to the fleet for a year to a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and slowly feed us back into flight school. And they said, but don't worry, no one junior to you is going to go to flight school before you, which turned out to be a total lie, because guys in Delta Company, which was, 4 companies behind the 6 companies they pulled out of the loop, went straight to flight school.
Wait, they lied to you?
Yeah. Can you believe it? I was
Hard to
shocked
believe.
to find gambling in that casino. So, yeah. So they said, what we're going to ask you to do is, and by the way, so that was for those guys who could maintain their flight contract through a physical. Well, they took me into a room and they put up these little Scrabble tiles in a slightly darkened room, and I got 32 out of 32 letters in my right eye, or in my left eye, and I got 30 out of 32 letters in my right eye, and that was a failing flight physical.
Wow.
The doc, he's putting these little letters up on a board 6 at a time and holding them up against the wall. And, I'm covering my left eye and that's an E, that's an O. And I only got 30 of the 32. Nope, you failed. And the second time I came back, he goes, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah. You're not going to get your flight physical. You're not going to pass. And of course, in that time, I only got 31 out of 32 in my right eye. It's like, oh, son of a bad word. And they're at that point, they're going, well, if you'll DOR, you'll get one of your top 3 choices. DOR is drop on request. Your flight contract, you'll get one of your top 3 choices, and or you can resign your commission, leave the Marine Corps, go back and be a civilian. Those are your 2 choices. And so I went, well, geez, what do I do? And at that point, I went, all right, I'll DOR, but I want air traffic control, air defense control, or aviation supply. And so the whole thing went out, all the paperwork went out for all these guys who DOR'd and gave up their flight contract. And about 3 weeks later, everybody gets their MOS except for me and 3 other guys in my platoon at the basic school. What the hell's going on? We don't know. We'll wait like another 3 weeks go by. Finally, we get our MOSs, the 4 of us. Mine was ground supply. They're like, well, yeah, your paperwork got lost, but it finally made it up there, and they didn't have any of those 3 MOSs. But so they gave you ground supply, which is like aviation supply. I'm like, no. Counting helmets ain't like counting airplanes. Sorry. Different MOS entirely. And so I wound up doing a congruent, which is a congressional inquiry, and going, hey, how is it that someone who was a civilian when I was a lieutenant gets to pick their MOS ahead of me because they lost my paperwork? And they came back and gave me a Hawk missile job as here's a job in the air wing, and it's not ground supply. And I went, okay, it's acceptable, close enough. And so I was a Hawk missile air defense officer for just shy of 3 years before, and I kept applying to flight school over and over and over again, every 90 days in accordance with Marine Corps orders. And I was, this is hilarious, actually. I was less than 3 months from separating from the Marine Corps and going and being a civilian again when I got orders to flight school. And
wow.
I thought it was a revenge trick by a buddy of mine who had gone out on a debt, and he was a real clown. And so he was always screwing with people. And so when he came back from a debt, we had a Navy doc go down to the battalion executive officer's office and set himself up there in his dress blues and call him in. We called him in from the strip, which was about 1/8 of a mile away. Come up to the front. Navy doc wants to see you. He goes in, and this is a great guy. He's a Naval Academy grad. He goes in, stands at attention, reports as ordered. This hospitalman, first class, HM1, goes, relax, Lieutenant. I'm an enlisted man. You don't have to call me sir. We have this contact report while you were in South Carolina on a debt. You were out, we went bowling and we met some girls at the bowling alley, but we're using public bowling balls, sir. And so it all devolved from there. And I was pretty sure at the time I got my orders, he was working at wing headquarters, and I was pretty sure he was screwing with me to give me orders to flight school that were going to be bullshit. And they weren't. He wasn't screwing with me. They were genuine orders. So that's how I got to flight school. I just kept reapplying. And eventually I got it. So,
because you were figuring at some point, eventually you were going to memorize all the letters, and then whether you could see them or not, you were going to get it.
Yeah. So listen, when I got screwed over at full disclosure, when I got screwed over at TBS, my vision was 20/20. No doubt in my mind. I could, like I said, it was a Scrabble bullshit test. And by the time I was a senior first lieutenant at Pensacola and going through flight school, I was having to do what's called orthokeratotomy, which meant I was wearing hardened contact lenses, and I could take them out and pass an eye test for about 45 minutes. And that's how I got through the flight physical at Navy Pensacola. And they were ready to drop me. I got the NAMI whammy, which is the Naval Air Medical Institute whammy, which they did it. But if you went through as a first lieutenant, they pulled you and they went, you're not eligible. You failed flight physicals. And I went, no, I DOR'd, which means I can still take a flight physical and go back. And they went, oh yeah, you're right. And I went in there and took, they're like, all right, come back after lunch for the eye test. And so I went out to lunch, came back right before walked back in the building, popped my contact lenses out, went in, took the eye test, and like, yeah, we can tell if you're wearing contact lenses or have worn them. And I'm like, okay, well, let me know. And passed it. And I made it through every flight until my last flight in flight school was my first down, my first unsat. And that pushed me into the following month. It was carrier call. It pushed me into the following month. And it was Dave Brown, Doc Dave Brown, who died when Columbia broke up on reentry. He was a Navy doc who talked his way into flight school through his monitor. And I said, Dave, man, I'm screwed here. I got to take another flight physical. I said, I'm not sure that the contact lenses are going to work anymore. He goes, they've invested so much money in you. They're not going to screw with you. He goes, I still keep my medical stuff up, like every Tuesday on base. So come in next Tuesday. I'll give you your flight physical. And so I went in there, and a female corpsman sitting there, and she's giving me the eye test. And she's like, okay, what do you see on line 7? And I'm like, E-O. Does that O look a little bit like a D, sir? I meant D. Okay, good to go. And the following week, I got my wings. And, by the way, after you get your wings, you don't need to see 20/20 anymore. You just need to be corrected to 20/20. And to this day, I see 2015 with my glasses on. So
corruption and chicanery.
Absolutely. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
I mean, it is a good reminder about how it's easy to look at someone later in life who's successful and has a career behind them. And I think for all of us who are normal, modest people, if we can pull you aside and have a real conversation, you say, look, I got to the right places at the right time, and I worked hard when I needed to work hard. But I don't think anyone's out there denying that it takes a lot of luck and a lot of help from other people.
You absolutely
where you are.
Absolutely. And, and the other thing I'll say about that is that, it takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of hard work. And I think it's kind of screwed up now. And I hope the pendulum swings back a little bit, because my understanding is unless you have a 4.0 and a mechanical engineering degree or an aerodynamics engineering degree, it's tough to get a slot in naval aviation. And you know what? I've got a bachelor's of art in history. And I'm telling you, there are guys out there like me We aren't the greatest mathematicians. We aren't the greatest engineers. We have a desire to fly airplanes and the ability to see the 3D world around us I never got airsick in my life, not once, no matter who was flying, whether I was flying or somebody else was flying. And I just had this innate desire to be in an airplane and controlling the airplane. And I think that is far more important than can you do differential calculus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And the FAA has been, on the controller side, the FAA has been trying to figure out how they can spend their money to predict who is going to be a successful air traffic controller. And they have gone through so many different testing methods and everything like that. And even back when I was in Pensacola, the trope was the number one guy in the class in academics is going to wash out in actual training. And
right.
It wasn't 100% true, but it did happen all the time because a lot of it is just gut and being able to, again, our jobs are different. Air traffic and flying planes are two
They're
different
not as
jobs.
different as you think. They really aren't.
They have a lot of related skill sets, and a lot of it is related to not panicking under pressure and being able to visualize things and being able to be 2 steps ahead of either the machine that you're flying or the machines that everyone else is flying. But that's hard to gauge in a test. The government's still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. No, I think it goes back to is there a multi-dimensional, maybe even 4D, so it's not only, length, width, and height, but time. Where's that airplane going to be relative to where it is now? And just as it takes that ability to think ahead as a pilot, it takes that ability to think ahead as a controller. There's no doubt in my mind that that's one of the more difficult jobs out there if you don't have an innate ability to see the future, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, I tell my trainees all the time, like, your job is to predict, and the seconds and the timing is different, right? 5 seconds to a Harrier pilot is one thing. 5 seconds to a controller is another thing. So in the space of like a place like SFO, my goal with my trainees is like, look, first of all, what happened in the past doesn't matter. You're only working in the present and the immediate future. Your job is to predict what is going to happen in the next 30 to 60 seconds based on logical deduction and experience and what I'm telling you if I'm your trainer, right? Like, you're taking all of that time and experience, and you can make some deductions and base your decision making on that. And another thing I've taken from listening to fighter pilots that I've heard probably on your show and in other interviews as well, and I tell my trainees all the time, an 80% good decision right now is better than a 100% correct decision 2 minutes from now.
Yep.
Right? Like, there's shit flying and happening and moving, and you got to be able to make a decent decision right now and move on with your life.
One other quick thing I'll add to it. It goes to, and for somebody who is under 30, they don't know this name or may not know this name, Wayne Gretzky, who is arguably the best guy to ever play the game of hockey. His natural ability was what? It was not to skate where the puck is, but to skate where the puck was going to be. And so he met the puck where it was going to be, and he was able to grab it and shoot. And I think that applies to controllers and to pilots and aviation in general, to know what's going to happen in the future. It's not a given, but some people can see it and some people can't. I'm not saying I can naturally see it. I just had such a desire to be in an airplane and control it that I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And if I couldn't do it in the military, I was going to do it civilian. I was looking at schools out in Colorado. I was looking at other ways to go get all my ratings so I could go fly airplanes. That's all I ever wanted to do.
Oh, yeah. So, and I think, I know we're going to wrap up my questions here so we can get to your post-show stuff. I know we've been on for a while, but I know when it comes to leadership that, one of the things you're looking at is to kind of be able to guide people in the right direction. And I know you guys have experienced that as both as aviators and as officers, but I think personally, I don't know how you guys feel in terms of having a Harrier trainee or a pilot under your wing, literally. But for me, I'll take work ethic and perseverance and all of those intangibles over natural quality 9 times out of 10, because I've seen the controllers who come in and it comes easy to them, but they got shitty work ethic and also like there's something to be said for struggle. I think something, I joke around with my friend at work all the time. My friend Gary, who's a helicopter pilot, lots of experience, been an AMT, similar to Styx, actually. He has a similar background except for the engineering part. And, it's like, it's just, you gotta push and work hard at it. And I think, I struggled a lot in my training at SFO. When I walked into ground there, I had no idea what I was getting into. And my experience in the Marine Corps did not prepare me for ground control there. But I'd rather have someone now when I have trainees, I would rather have someone who has struggled through something than someone who's never failed and never struggled, because then they don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to deal with failure. They don't know how to deal with struggle. And that's important. I mean, I think that's part of what makes you successful. And I think if it weren't for my failures, I wouldn't be as successful as I am now.
Oh, but before you go and hit up Fig with, how he got into flying Harriers and all that too, because you got to talk to, brother.
Why? I'm having fun just listening.
I know, right on. I hear you. But so what was the biggest difference? You said you weren't prepared for what you found when you walked into the SFO tower. What did you expect to see versus what you saw? What was the big difference?
I mean, for really ground control. I mean, ground control is just a hornet's nest there, and working at Pendleton is really the only tower ground experience that I had. Single runway, like 3 taxiways, just doesn't compare, right?
Yeah. Not multiple airplanes taxiing at the same time a lot.
Not like that. And air carrier is its own experience as well, and there's to be said, it is nice dealing with military pilots because generally Marine Corps pilots are professional, they know their shit, they know the books, and their phraseology is pretty decent.
Yeah, but then you get to a place like San Francisco and you got a bunch of Coast Guard pilots you got to deal with.
Well, I'm thinking more of the GAs, all the rich guys flying into San Francisco that fly out a signature, flying for, rich people and whatever. And some of them are great, but some of them are shitty. And statistically, if someone's going to screw up on ground, turn the wrong direction, whatever, it's going to be a general aviation pilot 8 times out of 10. Also airports are built over decades. And I think the taxiway signs and all the signage at SFO is designed for like a 777, 747 cockpit, generally speaking. So the lower to the ground you are in a citation, the less of a bird's eye view you have and the harder your job is in terms of making the right taxiway. And you look at the map, there's like 4 hotspots, right? There's one section right there in the armpit of the 4 runways where it's like 7 taxiways all meet in the same place. So, it's just unique and has its own challenges, but yeah, I mean, I'll pass it over to Fig. My next question was going to be I wanted to hear your most oh shit story from flying, whether it was combat or airliners. But if you want to throw Harriers in there as well, Fig, go ahead. But I wanted to hear that from you guys.
Most oh shit. Well, I got an oh shit story for you, but it's not from flying Harriers. It's from flying C-130s. Is that okay?
Hell yeah.
Because I got some oh shit. Harrier stories, but they can't be collaborated because I was by myself. This is
no one saw me. You can't prove a
thing. Well, so I did have we asked people, hey, how many did you ever have your hand on the handle? And I actually had my hand on the handle more than once, and at one point
He's talking about the ejection handle here, folks.
Yeah, the ejection seat handle. I actually started pulling on it and got it out of the detent. And so this is the story. It goes like this. I was doing a post-maintenance check flight in a T-45 Goshawk down in Kingsville, Texas. A T-45 Goshawk is at the time was a brand new McDonnell Douglas airplane based off the British Hawk, and it was replacing the TA-4 as a trainer. And I was one of the initial cadre guys to get trained in it, and then I was turning around and training other instructors. But I was one of the post maintenance check pilots, and this airplane had all the flight controls re-rigged. And I'm rolling down the runway, and I get it off the ground. And as soon as the main gear come off the ground, the airplane starts rolling rapidly to the left. And without even thinking about what I'm doing, by the time I realized that I had got it to stop rolling, I was full right stick deflection, max stick deflection. There it is right there. Max stick deflection to the right. And it had stopped rolling, but I had to hold it full right. And then I realized my left hand was no longer on the throttle. It had gone to the ejection handle, and I'd actually started to pull it. And I couldn't get it to go back into the detent. It was like, so, you know, I was probably, I don't know. I can't say in the debrief when I finally, and I wasn't sure I was going to stay in the airplane anyway, because it took full right aileron to keep the wings level. To make a long story short, I got it back on the ground safely. I landed at warp speed to keep the controllability. And then when I safed the seat as fast as I could, once I got it on the ground, and I asked the guys that rigged the ejection seats, I said, so how close was I to actually
Going for a ride?
going for a ride? And they said it could have been a millimeter, or it could have been a centimeter, but you were right there.
Man, yeah, I can't imagine
Okay,
that.
so but the initial story that popped into my mind, I'm flying a combat mission in Afghanistan, and in a C-130, we've got, 60 some Army paratrooper guys in the back, and we're taking them into this little fob right on the Pakistani border the fob was called Sharona, and it had a 3,000 foot gravel strip, and it was uphill, one way in and one way out, because you had to land going uphill, and you turn around and take off going downhill, and you couldn't really go around because there was the giant mountains right. You're surrounded by giant mountains. Yeah, it was a box canyon. And so I'd been in and out of there a bunch, and it wasn't really a big deal. And we did almost all of our flying at night. So we're flying on the night vision goggles. We called them NOGs. And it was, like I said, it was like 2 a.m, and we were landing on this little gravel strip. And and by the way, there's a giant ditch off the end of the runway. When I say ditch, it's probably a 50-foot drop off with a big, probably in the winter and the rainy season, it's full of water. It's probably a river, but there wasn't any water. This was the summertime, and right about 50 feet before, seconds before we were going to touch down in the box, in the 500-foot box we have to land in, but we got lased. And at the time, I didn't know we were getting lased. All I knew was the cockpit got real bright, and the aircraft defense system started putting out flares on its own, and some of the flare buckets were up under the cockpit. So I was getting this boom, 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 boom from underneath my feet, and somebody
and getting to you, what does getting lased mean? Like, what are you expecting is happening on the ground?
Well, at the time, I thought we had some kind of shoulder-fired missile shot at us, because it lit up the cockpit. I thought it was at close range, but what it was a laser. Probably some kid, down in the ditch hit us with this green laser. Of course, when you're on night vision, a laser is like the sun, and it also, like I said, it set off the aircraft defense system. Well, so everybody screamed in the cockpit. I say everybody. It was probably just me that screamed, but and then I realized it was a laser, and I said, "It's a laser! It's a fucking laser!" And we landed like boom right after that, and then the troop commander comes running up, because all of the flare buckets on the airplane were putting out flares, and it got really bright outside, which also didn't help the NOGs. And he comes up and goes, "What the hell just happened?" And I said, "Well, somebody shot a laser at us off the end of the runway." He goes, "We're gonna go get him." And as soon as we landed and put the ramp down, they all took off. So that was kind of fun.
Wow.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, I tried to keep my questions as interesting as possible, but I think it is important for anybody listening who's younger and thinking about joining the military. I had kind of a two-parter for both of you guys, and I would love both of your answers. So part one is, what are some things you learned or pick, one or two, as Marines, as leaders and officers, and as pilots, that you can think of that you apply in your everyday life now, be it as a professional or personal? And then secondarily, what would you say to young kids and their parents who are thinking about joining the military? How do they figure out if that's the right choice for them? It's kind of a two-parter.
Go get them, Fig.
Well, the second part's really easy, because I do a lot of mentoring with young people about that subject. But let's tackle the first one. We're all Marines here, and if anything else, the Marine Corps changed us in some way, and you're never the same person you were after you've gone through that change. And so I would say I am much more disciplined than I ever was before, and the attention to detail that I learned when I was in officer candidate school has been my saving grace as a professional aviator. Because attention to detail, when you start getting lazy and not being focused, that's where things go wrong. So I use that every day in my everyday life. And as far as joining the military, I always ask, what is the goal? What is your goal? Is your goal to get your college paid for? Do you want to do it as a career? And so I go down this list of questions, and I get them to talk to me so I know where we're going. And the bottom line is young people mature so fast after being brought through that process that all branches of the military really do it. They break you down, they take away your individuality, and then they build you up as a team and teach you what it means to work as a team. And then they give you back, your individuality again, and you're different after that. So, it doesn't matter what branch that is. The process is pretty much the same. I think the Marine Corps is probably the absolute best at it, but that's just my humble opinion. And then, I guess the biggest thing about going in the military is you've got to realize that when you raise your hand and take the oath, you are signing a blank check to the United States to be payable by up to and including your life. And if that is something that you are hesitant about, then the military is probably not for you. Because if you're in the military and there is a war, you are invited.
You're cordially invited to join.
Yes.
That's right. And your RSVP is already yes.
Yeah. That's a great answer. I'm going to pass it to Repeat here, but I wanted to ask you guys, did they already use the colored tags at the recruiter's office when you went in? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I don't know.
So it's right in line with what Fig is saying. And, it's funny, for as much shit as we can talk about recruiters lying and all this, when I look back on it, I'm kind of like, man, a lot of the methods they used, though, did end up getting people in the right place where they needed to be. And one of the things they showed me were a bunch of colored tags, like on a keychain. And each tag had a thing on it, either tangible or intangible. So like money for college, respect, honor, career,
okay.
Et cetera, et cetera. And they were different colors and you didn't know how they were coded, but all the Marine Corps ones were black appropriately. And they were all intangibles: honor, courage, commitment, perseverance, blah, blah, blah. And then all the other branches were like money for college and technical aviation skills and, blah, 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 all the fancy stuff that the Air Force gets. And so, like in an initial conversation, which is what Fig's talking about, they wanted you to pick at least like 3 out of 5 of them to be black to know that you were actually interested in the Marine Corps for the right reasons. And, at the time, I'm sure idealistic as hell at 19, all of mine were black, but it
you bet.
Kind of makes sense.
Awesome.
Repeat?
Oh, yeah. So,
You're up.
I'm going to dovetail off of what you just said, and then I'll go back and answer your question. It's one of my favorite stories. When I was the executive officer of Bravo Battery at 3rd Land Battalion, and our battery clerk was, I won't say his name because I'm not at liberty to say it, but it talks about his recruiting experience. His grandmother was Mrs. Cleaver, Barbara Billingsley, also in the Airplane movie. Who
actually
Mrs. Cleaver, actually
Barbara Billingsley.
Yeah,
okay.
Who spoke jive in the Airplane movie? I speak jive. Let me. speaking of movies. So, like, how is it you wound up here? He says, well, I went to talk to the Coast Guard, and guy was at lunch. This Marine Corps gunnery sergeant calls me in. Says, hey, sit down, relax. And then he shows me this recruiting video. And, there's guys, they're rappelling out of CH-46s and getting in these Zodiac boats and then rushing ashore and then climbing up the side of buildings and mowing people down with machine guns, bad guys down and stuff. And it's like, that's pretty cool. He goes, yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did in the Marine Corps. Now I'm out here on recruiting duty, but he goes, oh yeah, well, what are you? He says, well, I'm a gunnery sergeant. He goes, well, I want to do that. So he enlisted to be a gunnery sergeant. And he says he's about a week into boot camp when he is in a class on the rank structure, and he realizes he's probably not going to be a gunnery sergeant for a while.
But he could have made it. Could have been.
That's right.
Oh, there she is. There's Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara Billingsley, sweet lady. So yeah, so that was a great story. Yeah, he got oh yeah, I'm a gunnery sergeant. Oh, I want to do that. So
and even become a master gunnery sergeant.
Because the Coast Guard recruiter wasn't there. And remember, Spice had the same kind of deal. He was wasn't he going to sign up for the Navy or something like that?
Yep.
And the Navy guy wasn't there, but the Marine recruiter was there.
Yep. And the Marine got him. So,
yeah.
Oh, too funny. So how'd I get the Marine Corps what is it about the Marine Corps? It goes back down to, I think, they teach, number one is small unit leadership. The way the Marine Corps works and why it works so well, right, is all the way down to an infantry platoon. You've got a fire team, and that's 4 Marines led by, 3 Marines report to 1. And those 3 fire team leaders report to a squad leader, and those 3 squad leaders report to a platoon leader. And the 3 platoon leaders report to a company leader, and so on. That triangular pyramid goes all the way up, and they teach that small unit leadership and expect independent thinking. And like you were talking about, you're the guide on, and it was kind of falling on the guide rather, and it was kind of falling on you to make a decision one way or the other. A right, wrong, or indifferent, you were going to make the wrong decision because you were a recruit at recruit training. But the fact is,
but you made a decision.
Expecting you to make a decision. That's right. And
that's right.
That's what they teach. Make a decision. And somewhere in here it was said, a decision, a wrong or an 80% right decision now is better than, a perfect decision 2 minutes hence. So it all boils down to those traits of leadership that the Marine Corps preaches, and 2 that have always struck home with me are lead by example. Who are the best leaders that I've ever been around in the Marine Corps that were senior to me? They were those who were willing to, for lack of a better way of putting it, clean the toilets. Doesn't matter that the guy was an 05 or an 06. He's willing to clean the toilets. He's willing to do the shit work that it takes to show, I'm in this with you. I may be in the lead position, but Sticks often puts it as a servant-based leadership. I'm the guy that all falls on, but I am the one who is going to make a decision, and I'm going to take the shit when it starts coming downhill. I'm going to be the shit screen. I'm not going to let it fall down on you guys, and I'm going to be putting myself out front. So I'm going to lead by example. That's the one thing. And then the other thing was the integrity. And it goes back to what I learned by watching that guy get bounced out on his ass for taking 2 pieces of bread and lying about it. He'd have been fine. He could have retired as the commandant of the Marine Corps probably at some point in time. And he had the stones to stand up and go, you know what? You told me to take 1 piece of bread. I was hungry. I took 2. Make me do extra push-ups. I'm on it. So those are the 2 that stick out in my head that kind of led me in the direction of the Marine Corps. Like Fig, I was pissed off at the Marine Corps after they treated me so well in Quantico the second time around. And I went and talked to the Navy, and they were like, yeah, we're not interested. And I went, okay, I'll go back. I'm going the Marine Corps. And when I had the option to go Navy, I didn't consider it. I'm going to stay in the Marine Corps. And if I don't get to fly, that's okay. I'm an officer of Marines. I'm a lieutenant of Marines. And boy, there was just no higher honor. Did it suck? Yeah. a lot of the times it really sucked, but it was also, it's such a privilege to wear the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor.
Yep.
Leadership from the front, right?
Yeah.
Dan, leadership from the front. You don't sit in the back and tell and say how it's going to be. You say, well, here this is I can sum it up for you with a story. There was a Marine at the time, a captain named Everett Pope. Battle of Peleliu. Do you know what you guys know what I'm talking about?
I do.
The Battle of Peleliu was in the South Pacific in World War II, and it was one of the, there was more Medal of Honors given out on the Battle of Peleliu than any other battle in the South Pacific. And years later, when Everett Pope was out of the Marine Corps and he was talking to a big conference on leadership, somebody asked him, how do you motivate Marines? Because back then, you didn't just do one amphibious landing and fight on one island. If you lived, guess what? You were gonna refit and go to the next island and do it again. And so these Marines that he was leading were over and over doing this. So they said, there's a picture of him right there. He was a Medal of Honor winner himself. And they said, how do you...
These guys were getting mowed down like you saw in Saving Private Ryan. I mean, the door falls down, they start taking rounds to the head.
What did you say? How did you motivate Marines to get off that landing craft when the door came down? Because they knew what they were going into because they've done it before. And he said,
2 words.
Follow me.
2 words.
2 words. Follow me.
Yeah.
And they would, because he went first. That's it in a nutshell, boys.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do what you're asking other people to do, they're probably not going to respect you or trust you.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me as well, including he's retired, so I can call him out by name, Rolf, but one of my supervisors in the FAA who I worked with for my first 10 years at San Francisco Tower, he was a Navy controller, just most honorable guy, best leader, best boss I've ever had. I would have followed that guy into a burning building, no questions asked. And it was about selflessness, service, being competent and willing to do the work himself. But also he taught me that leadership is not a position of privilege. Leadership is a role, just like your lowest private is going to have a role in a platoon, and your gunner that's specialized in something, and all, you're out there flying a Harrier by yourself, right? But 100 other people have to be doing their job properly for that airplane to fly and get maintained and everything else. So it's like
easy.
It is a position of privilege sometimes in the sense that you get a lot of perks, but that's not what it's about, right? You're filling in a role just like everyone else is filling their role. And while they're not interchangeable, they're equally important. And I think we all know the examples of good leadership of the people who realize that, and bad leadership in the people who are just looking to, get the bling and
get to the next level.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you guys need to not screw this up because my promotion's on the line.
Yeah. You can sniff that out from a mile away, even if they don't say it out loud like that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody can. We've all been there. We know, this dude's just in it for himself.
Oh yeah. So, and that's why, like you said, 2 words, follow me. The Marine Corps does sometimes do a little bit of mythologizing. I think I was earplugs to all the Marines that are really attached to the classic Marine Corps lore, because I did find out that, the term devil dog was basically made up by a journalist, and the story the Marine Corps tells you is a little bit of a fib. However, there are real stories that are actually accurate, and a couple that come to mind are, I forget right now the name of the captain in World War I, and I can't remember if this was Belleau Wood or not, but when we were deciding what to name our show, we allowed the audience to vote on it, and Danger Close got the most votes. But my pick, which would have been, a little bit less well known, was Retreat Hell. And that's from the famous line of the Marines relieving the French as the French were retreating and saying, hey, we got to retreat. The Germans are too strong, et cetera. And the captain who just got there said, retreat, hell, we just got here. Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the immortal words of Gunnery Sergeant Dan Daly, I believe this was when.
Come on, you sons of bitches. You
Come
would
on,
you
sons
would
of
have lived
bitches, do you
forever.
want to live forever? You can see it, and it's been repeated in many films. You can see it in Starship Troopers. Come on, you apes, you want to live forever? But that is actually an example of combat leadership and something that somebody actually said.
And the one thing that I'll say this, and then I'll play another ad, and we'll come back and talk about movies, which is more on the theme of your show, is the number one fear that most Marines have going into battle is not death. All right, it's letting your buddy down.
Yeah, it's letting the guy on the left or the guy on the right or your wingman down.
Yeah.
I saw that I think it's Styx was commenting on the platoon leader eats after the platoon has had chow. You're right, leaders eat last. And I'll throw one very quick anecdote out before we go to break real quick. When we were out in Iraq and we got augmented by those sailors, there was a Navy petty officer. I hate to call out stereotypes, but he was a stereotype, very rotund with a little mustache. And we got chow delivered every day when we were working because we couldn't go anywhere. We had to be there manning the facility, both radar and the tower.
Yep.
And so the Humvee would come back from the chow hall with the rats. I have never seen someone memorize the chow schedule like that petty officer. That guy knew on the minute when chow was going to show up, and he was like an AC2 or something, right? He was like an E5 or whatever. He was first in line in front of all of my Marines, didn't matter, PFCs, whatever. And he was getting in line to have seconds to the point where as the senior sergeant there, I actually had to call him out in front of everyone, which I do believe in praise in public, reprimand in private when possible, but this kind of just, and I was like, hey, petty officer, you want to give some of my Marines a chance to have their first plate before you have your second?
Right.
I don't even know if he was embarrassed, honestly, because someone who really is willing to do that, I don't even know if it affects
Probably
them.
went right over.
Yeah, sounds like keep hands and
round
feet
head.
clear of intake, right?
I love the Navy, but you know that we have to give them their ribbings when they
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely.
Always.
And they're going to say, listen, in all fairness, the Navy guys out there, you're all saying, hey, the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy, and that's right. We are. We're the men's department. So,
right.
Department. As long as we got that straight.
So, all right.
Thank
Well, let's go to a quick ad, and we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes and talk movies.
Hey there, aviators. It's Fig and Repeat, your co-host from So There I Was, the show where we share all the wild aviation stories and maybe even a few tips and tricks along the way.
That's right, Fig. And speaking of tips and tricks, let's talk about something every aviator contemplating the leap into commercial airline flying has to face: getting that airline transport pilot rating, the ATP.
The good old ATP rating. Remember those days, Repeat?
Ooh.
Getting your ATP with an FAA examiner in a piston engine plane that smelled like 100 low lead in somebody's old socks. You've never been inside of it before, let alone flown it.
Right? Those are crazy days. But you know what? Our friends over at Flight Training International have cracked the code on making this transition to getting your ATP or type rating way easier.
Founded in 1991, these guys have been helping pilots like us navigate the tricky waters of transitioning from military to commercial flying, or from commercial multi-engine rating to the PhD of flying the coveted airline transport pilot rating. And get this, FTI was originally founded to provide type ratings to pilots eyeing jobs at Southwest Airlines.
And talk about experience. The current owners have over 37 years of aviation under their belts. They've flown operationally in both the U.S. Navy and the Air Force, and they've been training pilots like us for the last 25 years.
And they've got an impressive list of clients, from the Air Force and Navy to FedEx, United, and even government agencies. These guys are the real deal.
Oh, absolutely, Fig. And they specialize in helping pilots just like you and me transition smoothly into the airline world. Whether you need an ATP CTP, which is what Congress mandated 10 years ago to even be allowed to take the ATP written exam, or an ATP rating or a type rating, they've got you covered.
And here's the best part of all, folks. They're VA approved. That's right. Veterans, you can use those benefits to make your transition even smoother.
Nice. Oh, let's not forget about their instructors. These guys are active and retired airline pilots, many of whom are veterans themselves. No 300-hour wonders here, just seasoned professionals who know the ins and outs of flying airliners.
Plus, their training materials are top-notch. all iPad based, so you can study at your own pace, wherever you are. And their courseware includes everything you need to succeed, from manuals to sample orals.
And get this, Fig, their footprints are designed to require minimum time on site, so you can save your leave for terminal leave instead of spending it all in training.
That's awesome. So what are you waiting for, aviators? Don't waste your time with some designated examiner and a light twin. It smells like socks and 100 a little head. Head over to FlightTrainingInternationalRatings.com. That's FTIR Ratings.com. And tell them you heard about them on So There I Was for a $100 discount on any course you choose.
That's FTIRatings.com for all your aviation training needs. Remember, when it comes to making the leap into the airline world, Flight Training International has your back.
You know, I got to take a second to really thank you guys for the opportunity, because while I tell a story here and there on Danger Close when it's relevant to the material, like I've told some boot camp stories in Full Metal Jacket, etc., I never really get the opportunity to sit down with Marines and really shoot the shit and go over, you know, for you guys a much longer career, for me the 5 years that were very formative and very important in my life. So
Right.
I'm really happy to be here, and thank you guys for inviting me, and thanks for taking the time. We're running over 3. When they were like, oh, this will probably go 2 hours, I'm like, it'll probably go 4 hours because I know how this goes.
Hey,
But-
nothing wrong with that.
and you guys, some of you guys are on East Coast time. I'm in California, so the clock is on my side, but I appreciate that you guys are really sticking it out to get this through. So before we get to your Patreon extra stuff where I'll tell the Asiana story, let's talk movies for a second. My idea was, so there's a concept, especially in war films, that is very, very well known, and it's called rivet counting and rivet counters. And, you know, Repeat mentioned it earlier. He was like, oh yeah, when you hear runway 43 left, are you like just walking out of the movie immediately? Because it's like, you know, that no one did their research and it's bullshit. And I'm like, well, you know, first of all, when I'm watching the movie, I usually have a professional responsibility to stick it through to the end, no matter how bad it is, because I have to review it.
Well, hold on, I got to ask you both. Have you both seen Homeland? Remember that show?
The show? I've
Yeah.
seen
The
some of it.
series?
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
like a good season or two.
I watched
Yeah.
about 4 shows, and I had to be out because in the morning he was a sergeant, in the afternoon he's a gunnery sergeant, in the evening he's a staff sergeant. He's back
Right.
sergeant.
Right.
That's it.
I
I'm
know.
out. I'm
It's-
just stop it.
It's tech,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Come on,
Stop
boys.
it. I don't
Really?
mean to be a rivet counter, but when you can't even get a rank consistent over the course of a day, there's a problem.
Yeah, so that's what we call it, is rivet counting, and it's a balance, right? Because you take a look at something like Saving Private Ryan, which is, you know, a big, difficult project, and we did a long 2.5 hour episode on it. I cut it down from 3.5 hours, so we really explored the making of the film, the history, and really gave it its due, which it deserves because it's that caliber of a film. And, you know, yeah, you can get into the fact that how the fuck did Spielberg get the boat ramps backwards on the beach when there's, you know, dozens of photos of those actual locations, right? It's a small detail, but for anybody who knows anything about anything, you're like, well, that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, but it's not going to make me hate the film. Or the Tiger that they built as a mock-up, you know, it's like, well, the people in the know whether a Tiger's the steel wheels inside the treads are overlapping or not. Right now, I can't remember where they are on a Tiger, and you can call that out, but it's like, okay, but you're missing the point. Like, have you ever made a film? Making a film is tough shit. And so you can have a research team and you can have a huge budget, but mistakes are going to get made. So
Especially when you're trying to recreate 70-year-old equipment, right? I mean,
that doesn't exist, right? And
yeah.
God bless them, in the movie Fury, they actually did use Tiger. I think 131 is the name of the Tiger, but it's the one actual running, functioning Tiger that is left. Despite whatever people may think about the movie, it is cool.
and that was a
to
great
watch
movie, I thought. But
I loved
did
it.
too.
Fun to watch.
And watching
Fury
the
was
Tiger
fun.
in action is pretty cool. So
Well, Phil,
the questions for you guys are, what are your rivet counting things? What are the tropes that you see in film that have to do either with aviation or the military that just drive you nuts? And then maybe throw down, you know, one of your favorites and one of your least favorite, you know, whether it's Harriers, aviation, Marine Corps. The floor is yours.
well, okay. You hit the go button. So let's just start right now. Right. You know, Top Gun, the movie Top Gun, 1986. Right? It was huge. And I went and saw it when it first came out. I was on my way to Officer Candidate School. I was already in before the movie came out, right? But so, and I'd listened to Taco Bell, Tales with Taco. We had him on our show. He interviewed all the flyers from that original movie, all the Navy flyers that did all the flying, and they tried to tell. I can't think of the director's name. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? The director of Top Gun.
Yeah, that is Tony
the original.
Scott, Ridley Scott's brother.
They tried to tell him, no. This, pull the speed brakes out, going to fly right by. No, that doesn't work. And he goes, no, don't worry about it. This is Hollywood. This is how we're doing it. And the flying, which was the cinematography, the flying was awesome, but the dog fighting was really kind of a joke. And they were making ridgeline crossings while they're supposedly flying. Of course, the hard deck's supposed to be at 10,000 feet or whatever. That was just too much for me to look past, because I know better, and that movie particularly is horrible for me because of all the inconsistencies. Now, is it entertaining? Yes. Do I quote lines from it constantly? Have I quoted lines from it constantly since 1986? Yes. Why wouldn't I?
So you can still sit down and enjoy it.
Well, certain parts. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
But like Repeat said, anytime there's a war, a military theme, or an airline themed movie, it's hard for me to watch it, especially if there's a lot of technical things that aren't right. Like Repeat brought up, just the small things, like, in one scene he's got staff sergeant stripes on. In one scene he's got a gunnery sergeant stripes on. I mean, come on, boys, let's get our shit together.
Yeah, this ain't rocket
EGAs, EGAs facing outward.
EGAs facing the wrong way. Officers wearing enlisted EGAs,
Eagle Globe
enlisted wearing, yeah. It's, and then in the rank being worn wrong. Sometimes I've seen rank being worn in the wrong direction on a collar or, on a epaulette. It's maddening. You go, who was there anybody on the set that said, whoa, fix your thing there?
It just isn't that hard to do it right. Yeah.
No.
Right.
Yeah, and I had something I wanted to say about that. Now I forget what it was, but
was it Top Gun?
It might have been Top Gun. Yeah, I just watched it for the scene where they're, for the sex scene, for the gratuitous sex in the middle.
Okay, well, so
But,
finish up with then. What's your favorite? Like, do you have an aviation one that you really love that is relatively accurate, or just even if it's just a military or war film? What's the one that really hits it for you?
It's fairly recently I saw it. It was based on a true story. It was from the Korean War. It was the Navy. It was a Navy squadron where I can't think of the name of the movie. Devotion. Thank you. Yeah, black naval aviator, and his wingman actually went and crash landed, tried to get him out of the wrecked plane. Yeah, and that kid ended up getting a Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
I thought that was well done.
Yeah.
Nice. It's on our list. We haven't covered it yet, but yeah, it's on there.
And then Styx was putting up the banner on our live stream about the Guardian was accurate, that they put the rescue swimmers in the pool of ice water, and we need to get a rescue swimmer on our show. Those guys, big stones. Why would you jump out of an airplane into ice cold water? What are you, nuts?
Why?
You can get hurt doing that shit. I know. What do you want to live in? Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. Okay. All right. So anyway, and I think I may have told this story on the show before. One of my favorites is when you've got to go off the charts, unrealistic. A buddy of mine was sitting in a 7.6 first officer chair one morning, setting his trash up, and they started loading passengers. And the passenger walked up on the flight deck and said, I just want to say good luck. We're all counting on you. He's like, you asshole. And he turns around and looks, and it was Leslie Nielsen. He's like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, well, it's kind of expected of me. So he would do that whenever he got on a passenger flight. He would walk up on the flight deck and say, just want to say good luck. Everyone's counting on you. So
That's amazing.
yeah, that was good. And he,
John,
he took it apart. And nothing is funnier than watching a room full of pilots on a turn in a crew lounge at a major airline watching the movie Airplane. So good stuff. That if you're going to spoof a movie, that one was well done. Jeez, there's so many, there's so many really good ones out there. I do remember Top Gun and Full Metal Jacket came out pretty close to each other, if not within the same week, within the same month, I think. And as my wife called it at the time, Heavy Metal Jacket. It's like, no, that's a different, that's a different movie, honey. It was Full Metal Jacket. That one was fun. The first half of that movie, it's like, holy shit. That is great stuff there. And it's
Harley
probably,
Army made that movie.
yeah, probably the most, Arlie Army did it. And probably the most realistic Marine basic training film ever done. There wasn't much that was unrealistic about that in the big scheme of things, especially in the Vietnam era, because they could still smack you around then.
I don't know this to be a fact, but I was told by somebody that's in the know about that movie. We're talking about Full Metal Jacket, that Arlie Army was on the set to be a technical advisor.
Yeah, he was a tech advisor to Kubrick.
And when he started, when he flipped the switch and went into full drill instructor mode to try and explain, hey, this is how you need to be, they said, no, okay, you're it.
I think that's true, but it goes a little bit beyond that. I think he was actually trying to get the role, and he walked into Kubrick's office and berated him for like 15 minutes straight. I mean, he wrote something like 40 pages of drill instructor insults for that movie, and I'm sure they used most of them. So
that's awesome.
He's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, your listener mentions the DI with Jack Webb. I have not seen that, but it's been requested many times.
Oh, I have not seen that in probably 20 years. But indeed,
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Recently, that's awesome.
And I don't know if First Sergeant Crouch has been here the whole time or not. It was about him that I was telling that story about Francis learning a lesson, and he went to the bank and changed his $174 into loose change.
That's amazing.
Yeah, a special kind of sadistic you are, First Sergeant Crouch, and God bless you for every Marine and sailor you trained. You saved a lot of lives. Yeah.
By the way, about officer and a gentleman had a few verbal exchanges that were not realistic.
Yeah, you think?
No shit. Yeah, that's spot on right there, buddy.
Yeah,
spot on.
Yeah, rest in peace, Louis Gossett Jr., who just passed, I think, in the last 6 months. We covered Iron Eagle on the pod recently.
Oh boy,
that was hard to watch.
Top Gun.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah,
that was that was a challenge for us, because it sucks when all three of us are shitting on something and hate it, because A, it's a little more difficult to make an entertaining show when you don't have the kind of back and forth of three people disagreeing, and B, there are people who love it. And so we learned a lesson there where it's like, all right, let's bring someone on who loves this, so at least we have someone to argue against.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That movie was hard to watch. It just...
Yeah, I agree. Bilia.
It had a good soundtrack. Hey, it had a good soundtrack.
Queen was on the soundtrack. I did give it that. Okay, before we close up, last movie question. So, despite its inaccuracies, can either of you or both of you sit down and enjoy True Lies? Because I'm a Cameron fan for the most part, and I do love that film.
I you know what? I love that film. Even though as soon as the Harrier as soon as Arnold gets in the Harrier, it gets a little it's off the chart.
Yeah.
It's off the chart Hollywood. But it's a great story, and there's some great flying scenes with the Harrier before Arnold gets into it, which our squadron mates actually flew it. We interviewed them on our podcast, by the way. Those guys
amazing
flew it, and I do love that show. It has just the right amount of action and the right amount of comedy, and it has the Harrier in it.
Yeah, and not to mention Jamie Lee Curtis was a smoke show in that one, and the Harrier. In fact, I think Fig, did you not find the front half of one of the mock-ups that they made?
So
the Hollywood would not let Arnold sit in our airplane, or the Marines wouldn't let him sit in our airplane because it had a live ejection seat. And they built mock-ups and they hung it from a crane for that whole thing. And from 20 feet away, you could not tell the real airplane from the mock-up. Hollywood did an amazing replica.
I found the fuselage from about the leading edge root extensions forward down at the Lake of the Ozarks at a bar. Next to a bar, there was like an auto body shop, and it said something like Hollywood Extras. And I was looking around the back of the building over this chain link fence, and there was the first half of the bus from Speed was there, and Scooby-Doo van, and then all these other vehicles that were used in movies. And then there was this Harrier Hulk, and I'm looking through my phone right now. I'm going to send it to you, Repeat. I don't know. Or maybe I can send it to Sticks. I took a picture of my wife standing next to this thing, and it's that fuselage that we just saw hanging with Arnold in the seat and his daughter on the front, and then the terrorist kind of climbing up the wing. It's that.
Yeah. It was awesome.
If I can't find it.
Yeah, it's amazing the stuff they can pull off. And I got to say, R.I.P. Bill Paxton. As much as I love Aliens, that is one of my favorite Bill Paxton roles. He is so good as this.
Oh, these wives, they're so bored.
Oh, man. The used car salesman, he is, when he pisses his pants in that scene, please don't kill me. It's so, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah.
That is, he does play a good part. And, who was Roseanne Barr's husband at the time?
Tom Arnold,
Was the comedic. Yeah, Tom Arnold played a good, he played a good comedic relief guy in the movie. It was good. It was good. It was a good movie. I give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, no doubt.
And then, we got some behind the scenes when we talked to those guys that flew in it, and then going back and I watched it again after we interviewed those guys, and I could totally see that it was probably a really good experience for them. Now they dubbed the sound, they dubbed the comms back in after the fact,
right?
And they were using after we came back from Japan, we had a different call sign.
Call sign.
Bullshit line. Call sign. And I was shocked to find out that they didn't actually blow up a bridge with Maverick missiles. That was all.
Wait,
good model.
hold on. What?
Yeah.
They didn't blow
Real
up a
good
bridge.
model.
Well, hold on a second. Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they blew the shit out of that bridge with Maverick missiles.
Man.
Well, when we cover it on Danger Close, you guys can tune in and listen to our True Lies episode, which I do think is going to be coming up in the pipeline. And I will certainly listen to you guys' episode to get the behind the scenes stuff and give your guests.
And we're happy to put Moto and Bugs in touch with you. I bet they'll talk to you.
Absolutely. We can exchange Rolodexes, as older people say that know what we're talking about. Yeah, happy to do that. Well, I know you guys want to land this plane before we talk about some people who were not able to land a plane, unfortunately. So
we should probably do that. Fig, let's do it from heart, man. What do you say? I think we need to get some thank yous out there. The first one and foremost is, Dan, thank you for your service to our country, to the Marine Corps. We're deeply appreciative of that. So
thank you both for yours.
Yeah, thank you. And to all the veterans and active duty who serve, and their families who sacrifice so much to give us the freedoms that we have. We don't know you all, but we owe you all. I like that.
I like that term. I mean, I like that. Yeah. Got to thank Dave Hamilton, right, for giving us all the bandwidth and expertise and everything to get this thing out there.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to throw a thank you out to our guys behind the scenes there that are been hanging with us the whole time, Bago and Sticks. Thank you, gents.
Man, you guys make it happen. You make our lives so much easier by doing the background work you do for us, producing this show. It's deeply appreciated.
Yeah, and thank you to Sadie, who, if she hadn't reached out to our show, I wouldn't even have heard of you guys for who knows how much longer, and she made this connection happen. So
So Sadie's over at Backbeat Media. She helps us put shows together and talk about each other. And so we've got a couple shows here, and hopefully you have at least a show or two out of this. If you're not too embarrassed to put us in your feed.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, we're just a couple knuckleheads.
Right. Exactly. So, but hey, you know what, Dan, how would someone get a hold of you if they had a question about your show?
Yeah. So, and I did want to offer, I'm not shy and I don't care if people want to reach out. If you have air traffic control questions, if you're flying through SFO and you want a tour of a control tower, I offer that to all my friends and acquaintances.
Oh, I'm in.
And it is something that I can do. If you guys are ever flying through there, I'm happy to take you up and show you the guts and show you how things work. It's a very behind the scenes job that most people don't know about. So if you have air traffic related aviation questions, I do teach classes from time to time to the local pilots, but my birth name, my Italian name is Daniele. Most people can't say it, so I just go by Dan because it's easier. But my personal email, which I don't have a problem putting out there, is DANIELE.ferlito, FERLITO @gmail.com. You can hit me up if you have air traffic questions or if you want to do a tour of the tower. And if you want to check out Danger Close, our website has all our episodes on it, regardless of what platform you're on. You can go to www.dangerclosepod.com. We got a solid 50 plus episodes on there, plus our Patreon feed where we'll do war related. It's called Danger Close Enough. So T1, T2, science fiction, Starship Troopers. I'm good friends with Paul Salmon, who worked on that movie. So we had him on as a guest. I had a great friend of mine, Daniele Borelli, who does History on Fire, which is another great history show. He's just below Dan Carlin in terms of popularity there.
Nice. Okay.
And he teaches Native American studies. And so he was our guest on the Last of the Mohicans episode to talk about some of the cultural stuff and all that. So he was great. But you can find us on all your podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc., under Danger Close. Jack Carr does have a Danger Close kind of veteran Navy SEAL related thing, but we're the only film review related one. And again, we cover war films, so you can find us on all the platforms.
Nice. All right. So, and if you have any questions for our show, it's either Fig at sothereiwas.us, repeat at sothereiwas.us, Sticks at sothereiwas.us if you want a good answer, or Bago, BAGO, at sothereiwas.us. He'll also give you a good answer. Repeat and Fig, we'll just blow you off, give you bullshit, but you write to them. If you heard a term that we did not explain, how would you find out what you wanted? Write to us or go where, Fig?
Go to sothereiwas.us/glossary.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's pretty good.
Absolutely. And if, it's coming up on summer, and if you are watching the live stream, you see what we got right up there. Show logo on a nice bikini. How would you get yourself into one of those bikinis, Fig?
Well, you'd have to lose a little weight. No, that's not what you meant.
Yeah.
So there I was.us/merch.
There you go.
You can find the bikini, you can find tumblers, hoodies, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've had a couple new Patreons this week. Not going to name them right now. We'll name them in the intro preamble. So you've already heard it if you've gotten this far in the show. But yeah, thank you so much. We thank Sticks. We thank Bago. We got to thank Badass, BDSAviationPhotography.com for letting us use his fine aviation shots. Amazing artist with a camera, that guy is. BDSAviationPhotography.com. Thank you, Badass. And then
thank you, Badass.
And I got like a little earwig. Sounds like I have this tune I can't get out of my head. Is that just me?
No, sir. No, that's music, and that's the two Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound
those
good.
Guys.
That's
those guys.
Gringos.
Those guys. Yeah. Those gringos.
They put out 4 albums back in the day, and not a one of them has a bad song on it. I listen to them constantly because it makes me laugh.
Howlingly good fun. So that's it. Until next week, I guess, everybody. Stay safe and hold short of 28 left.
Hold short. Hold short.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
It's what? He said it's over.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
No. Hell no, it wasn't. And we are out.